Real Rankings, of course, is always how many teams are going to be in Key's Real Rankings. Jay doing us the honors to start us out.
Ocho, Tennessee.
Who wants to tackle Derrick Henry? Nobody.
Things that he's been able to do over the last couple of weeks. Nobody wants to get in his way. You're right about that, Jay Will. I mean, this guy is ridiculous. And imagine a car coming at you on a football field. That's exactly what that looks like for those opposing defenders. They're sitting at number 8.
Numero 7, the Colts.
Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs?
The Indianapolis Colts went out to Vegas. They gambled, but not in the casino. They went out there and gambled and won big over the Raiders. And when the Raiders did what they did in losing that game and then firing their defensive coordinator before he can even get home, that's what happens when you run up against Phillip Gun Rivers. I said it, Gun Rivers, because we all thought that he would be tricking the season off, throwing 20 interceptions like he did last year. So far, only 9 to 20 touchdowns.
Hands up.
Number 6, the Steelers.
We got to make routine plays routinely, and we're not making them routinely enough right now.
Well, that's true. You're not doing anything routinely except losing football games. But I think that when you look at this football team and Mike Tomlin, they're going to get their act together. I promise you. But right now, the Pittsburgh Steelers sit at number 6. They've been all over the map from 2 to 3 to 4. Now they're at 6. They've lost 2 straight games in a row. Big Ben, the defense has to get it together so they can find themselves in a nice playoff spot and try to get that number 1 seed back.
Numero 5, the Rams.
When Jared Goff is on, man, he's cooking. I'm just being honest with you.
Yes, that is correct. He is cooking. After a long, hard talk with head coach Sean McVay, Jared Goff went out there and took care of business against the New England Patriots. When you look at this football team, they got all the weapons that you need, from Higbee to Cooper Kupp to Robert Woods. They've even found a guy named Cam, and I'm not talking about Cam Newton. I'm talking about Cam Akers, young running back out of Florida State, who has them right now in the number 5 spot. I think they're a real playoff contender.
Eno.4, the Saints.
Well, this breaks my heart that I have to put the New Orleans Saints at number 4, but that's okay. I think they'll climb their way back into the number 2 spot, or maybe even the number 1 spot in front of Kansas City. When you look at it, they beat the Kansas City Chiefs. They go up to number 1. Yes, it is called nepotism. They have to get Drew Brees back healthy and in the lineup, because Taysom Hill's done about as much as he can do. We saw him against the Philadelphia Eagles. Didn't play great, didn't play bad, but in the middle is not going to be good enough down the stretch.
Numero 3, the Bills.
No one circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.
That is correct. That's my man, Chris Berman. When you look at the Bills, I've been fighting this all year long. I finally had to cave in and give the Bills some love. Sitting at number 3 in my real rankings, Josh Allen has been everything that he's supposed to be for the Buffalo Bills. We have these conversations about quarterbacks getting paid. Right now, out of that class, he's the guy that needs to be paid. Getting Stephon Diggs was huge for Brandon Beane, the general manager of the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are one of those teams that can make a deep run in the playoffs and give the Kansas City Chiefs some noise. If they got to go to Kansas City, obviously the weather will not be a factor.
Number 2, RELAX.
Relax.
The Packers.
Here's another team, in talking about weather. If they get the number 1 seed, they might as well punch their ticket to Tampa Bay to warm weather to the Super Bowl, because the teams that they're going to have to face are either coming out of the West Coast, coming out of warm weather, or coming out of a dome. That is not what they want to see in Green Bay in the month of January. I've been there and done that. That is not pleasant, especially with Aaron Rodgers knowing how to play.
Number 1, Kansas City.
I'm going to go get the biggest cheeseburger you've ever seen. Might be a double.
I think in all of this year, Kansas City may have fell out of the number 1 spot maybe once. And that's because Andy Reid didn't get a chance to eat that cheeseburger against the Las Vegas Raiders. But since then, I don't even know where to start. They spot teams 20 points, spot teams 14 points, and all they say is we're going to turn on the switch and go get them. And that's what they've been able to do with the future head coach of Eric Bieniemy. You know, it's so funny to me because I feel torn in this situation when it comes to the Kansas City Chiefs and Eric Bieniemy getting a head coaching job. I'd like for the Kansas City Chiefs to make him the highest paid offensive coordinator in the history of the NFL, meaning like $3, $4, $5 million to be the OC, so he could sit tight right there with Patrick Mahomes and wait for Andy Reid to walk out of the building and take over Pat Mahomes, unless he goes to Houston and get Deshaun Watson. Outside of that, stay in KC and get your money, man.
Wow.
And Key, that's a great point, as Jay would be able to tell us quite easily. That's essentially what happens in the NBA when you want to keep a top assistant, right? You want to keep Tyronn Lue around, won a championship with LeBron, just make him the highest paid assistant in the NBA. When Lue starts to think, you know what, I got the juices again to be a head coach, or in this case for Bieniemy to be a first-time head coach, I'm going to jump when the situation is right. I'm going to go to a good team. You sort of just wait it out and play the long game. Jay, I know you wanna jump in.
Only difference, Zubin, is that there's not a coup going on in Kansas City like there was with the Clippers. It's just saying. That's all.
Yeah, and the reason I brought that up because I was been thinking about that and looking at all the openings and the possibilities and stuff like that, and I'm saying to myself, if I'm Andy Reid and I'm the Kansas City Chiefs, yes, I want Eric Bieniemy to move on and get a job because he deserves it. He deserves to run his own organization and franchise. There's no question about it. But there's something that's cooking there, and we're talking about these, greatest of all times, these Super Bowls, what Patrick Mahomes can do. You know, when you take somebody away from a quarterback like an Eric Bieniemy, somebody that's been in his headset for several years, it does something to that player sometimes. And so, and Andy Reid's not young, and I don't know how long Andy Reid wants to coach, but he's not like 42, so to speak, right? And so if you say that the number for Eric Bieniemy as a head coach is $4 million a year, and I may be high, I don't really know the numbers, but let's call it $4 for conversation's sake, get close to that, very close to that as a Kansas City Chiefs, and do what the New England Patriots essentially did with Josh McDaniels when he decided to go to Indianapolis, and then come back. Go to him and say, look, we got this for you over the next 2 to 3 years. Andy's going to step aside. You can take over. We want you to be a Kansas City Chief. And whenever Andy retires, it's your job to lose. It's yours.
Jay, before you jump in, just want to answer Key's question. Andy Reid is 62 years old. You might recall in August, he and the GM, Brett Veach, signed concurrent 6-year contracts. So 62 with the Super Bowl, 6 years would obviously take you to 68. Obviously, considering we don't know what's going to happen next week, it's hard to extrapolate out 6 years. But, Jay, those are the numbers. At the age of 62, remember, Belichick's the oldest coach in the league. He's nearing 70. No reason to think Andy can't keep it going for a while and really put Eric in the position that I think Bill wants to put Josh McDaniels in.
No, I hear, just looking at some of the top paid NFL coaches, Bill Belichick, $12 million, Pete Carroll, $11 million, John Gruden, $10 million. I mean, it depends upon if somebody comes to the table with a massive amount of money, but I agree with Key. I think you try to do everything in your power to keep them there in Kansas City. Look, they're the Golden State Warriors, right? Like, they are that talented of a team. When you have Jeff Darlington, who I really value his opinion on things because he's always around. I mean, he was even the first one to call Tom Brady going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, he literally called Patrick Mahomes the Michael Jordan of NFL football. He said he has a chance he's moving in that direction. So anything to keep that core together, if your winning percentage is the way it's been, you keep it together for as long as possible.
And I know it's gonna be hard, man. It's gonna be hard. I mean, think about it. Matt Rule got the type of money and length of contract coming from college to Carolina. I mean, it's going to be hard to say no when you get the opportunity like Eric Bieniemy. I'm just hoping and praying for Patrick Mahomes' sake, the team's sake, that a guy like Eric Bieniemy could be around for several years and then kind of, be handed the keys to the car, but made sure that he's compensated enough to make it work. Look, think about it. Jason Garrett, when he was there with Wade Phillips, Jerry Jones made him the highest paid offensive coordinator, waiting in the wings, assistant, head coach, all of those sort of things. So when Wade Phillips decided to part, they just went right to Jason Garrett. So it could be one of those situations with Andy Reid, but I'm probably betting against myself on this one.
Key, we just got 30 seconds on this, but I just wanted to bring this up again. Matt Rule, $60 million contract to come from Baylor, never coached an NFL game, got $60 million, never coached an NFL game. I got to ask you this, though, just in the last 30 seconds, as we got a Super Bowl champion like yourself on the way here in just a moment. The only thing about Bieniemy staying is if for whatever reason the Chiefs just go off the tracks or, God forbid, like Mahomes were to get injured